Alrighty, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Distancing Book Festival. I'm so excited that everyone can be here. I'm going to give you a little information about the Book Fest, and then we'll get to our panelists, and we will go from there. So hello, and welcome to the Social Distancing Book Festival, where you can stay at home and support authors and indie bookstores, and hopefully add some books to your TBR list while you're here. I'm Melissa, and I'm from the channel Probably at the Library. You can find me on social media and here on YouTube. I like to talk about historical, romance. I enjoy talking about self-help books and a little bit of ethical fashion. In a moment, I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves. But first, let's talk a little bit about the Social Distancing Book Festival. So this is a book fest that was created by bookworms from all across the internet. We have 18 panels with more than 80 authors. We have virtual signings, giveaways, and fandom meetups going on today. If you look down in the description box, you'll be able to see links to everything that we have going on, choose what you want to join, and have a bit of fun. Don't forget today to also go to bookshop.org. You can support featured authors from today, indie bookstores, and 10% of the proceeds from today will be going to the Center for Disaster Philanthropy COVID-19 Fund. So you could also be helping them out while adding some books to your TBR. We hope that you will take advantage of all that the Book Fest has to offer. And in case you miss anything, the videos will be available for replay at a later time. Okay, let's go ahead and hear from our panelists. You can go ahead and introduce yourself with your preferred pronouns and tell us a little bit about the book or books you've written. Beatrice, why don't we go ahead and start with you? You want to give introduction and tell us about your book?
Thank you. I'm Beatrice Ballentine, and I recently published my debut novel, Taming the Captain, which is set in the Victorian era. Starts in Ireland and travels to New York City. And it's an adventure love story. And I'm just really happy to be here. I can't really think of anything big to share about myself. I have a large family, 5 children, and I live in a very rural area. So writing for me is easy, especially now that my youngest children are teenagers and they have getting their own lives and don't really want or need me around that much anymore. I have plenty of free time to write, so that's about it. And I'm sitting here thinking now, when it's someone else's turn, I'll grab my book because I just forgot to grab it to show the cover. So it's available available on Amazon, Nook, and Kobo. So
awesome. Paulette, do you want to share about yourself and your books?
All right, I'm Paullett Golden. Pronouns she and her. And at the moment, I'm working on finishing up the Enchantress series. The latest one from the Enchantress series is The Colonel and the Enchantress, and it's book 4. I have 2 more books to go in the series, and then we jump into the Sirens. I'm actually in Houston at the moment, Houston, Texas. I do have family in Northumberland, England, so I end up spending a lot of time in Northumberland. I kind of split my time. It's not 6 months or 6 months. It's more like 3 months there, 2 months there, and then the rest of the time here. But I do kind of consider splitting my time over there. So that gives me an opportunity to check out the lay of the land. And I've been writing for maybe a year or 2 years, so I'm still fairly new. To me, I still think like I've debuted my novel, but I've actually moved on since then. I still feel like, I'm a debut author. So yeah, still writing that vibe.
That's a good vibe to be on. I'm sure there's a lot of excitement when your first book comes out around it. So awesome. Thank you. All right, Janna, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your books?
Oh, you bet. I'm Janna MacGregor, she, her, and I split my time between 2 metropolitan areas, Kansas City and Minneapolis. Right now I'm in Minneapolis, and this is my small writing room. I write historical set in the Regency period for St. Martin's Press. And my latest, which was released the end of February, is Wild Wild Rake. And it's a beautiful cover. I love all my covers. I have great covers. But the name of the series is the Cavensham Heiresses. There's 6 books. This is the final in the series for right now. I'll probably come back to it later on. But I've got a new series with St. Martin's Press, and I'm in the midst of editing that first book in the series.
Fun. And did you find your 6 books in, you still have that new feeling every time you start a new book?
I do. Somebody asked me the question one time, what's your writing like, if you compared it to an animal. And I said, well, I start off as a plow horse, and then I'm kind of a horse, and then at the very end, I'm a racehorse, because, it takes that while to not only get the character arcs, but also the story arc. So it gets faster and faster the more you
Great
get it.
Analogy. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Katherine, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes. So I'm Katherine Grant. I published my debut Regency romance novel, The Ideal Countess, in January. So I am very much feeling the new author vibes. I'm based out of Queens, New York. So I'm really excited to have a social distance book fest and to connect with people, because I'm on week 7 of self-isolation. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I am participating in the virtual signing giveaway, and also running a giveaway where if you sign up for my mailing list, you can get a signed copy of the book, plus a full set of Countess Chronicle teas, which are teas aligned with different characters built by Adagio Teas. So sign up for my mailing list, and I'll be announcing the winner in May.
And the teas are amazing. I have had them. Oh, the Earl Grey is my favorite. So good. Are any other people in the giveaways or book fests, if you want to jump in now and let us know where anybody can go find your giveaways? Janna, are you in the giveaways?
I am in the giveaway. It's being posted later on today. I'm giving away the first 3 in the Cavensham Heiress series, and then some surprise. I haven't decided yet what.
Perfect. Paullett, any details?
Yes, I was actually supposed to be part of both the giveaway and the virtual signing, but I didn't see my name on the list for some odd reason. So what I'm going to do is post my own Rafflecopter giveaway just on my social media pages. So after this, maybe wait, I don't know, an hour or 2, and then check in, and I will have a giveaway link posted. And my plan is one of the books, any book of your choice, as well as a promotional bookmark or magnet that has, one of the covers and a quote from one of the books. So again, book of choice.
Perfect. Just start with book 1, because you're going to want to read the whole series. That's my advice. And Paullett also has an amazing newsletter too that I would highly recommend. Katherine has a great newsletter. I know you did some short stories in your last newsletter that you had. Janna has an amazing Facebook group. So much fun over on there. Ladies of Langston Hall, is that correct?
Langham Hall.
Langham Hall. So much fun over there with a lot of people that love historical romance also. Beatrice, do you have anything with the giveaways going on that you need to fill us in?
I'm doing, first of all, I forgot to mention my pronouns are she, her. I forgot that. And then I'm doing a virtual signing for Taming the Captain. So that's at the bookshop.org. Yeah.
Oh, so much goodness going on today. Giveaways, good stuff. I just love holding a book in my hands that an author has signed. I don't know what it is about it. I don't know. I'm sure you guys probably, even as authors, have like authors that you idolize and want to have a copy of their book. It's such a special little nook on my bookcase of all those books that I have. And I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone that we have on here with us. And I'm getting so many good morning messages. Tea perk is such a great idea. And so much fun going over on the comment section. So thank you all for being here with us today. All right, why don't we jump right into our panel questions? And we will start with that. So first question, Katherine, why don't we go ahead and start with you? Why did you pick the particular area that you did to write in, and what drew you to that era?
Yeah, so I decided to write Regency romance, first of all, because I was reading Regency romance and just loved it. And, there's the old adage, write the book that you want to read. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to keep reading Regency romance. But I think I was drawn to it because it's a really interesting period in terms of the upper class, there were so many different rules that it's kind of like a puzzle of what are you allowed to do and what aren't you allowed to do.
Right.
But then it's set in this time that was the nexus of all sorts of revolutions. There was political revolution with the American and French revolutions happening. There was the Industrial Revolution taking off. There was even literary revolution with the publication of Jane Austen's novels and developments in what people were reading. So there's just so much change happening and yet so much resistance to change that it just creates a really interesting atmosphere.
Absolutely. I love that answer. I love the write the book that you want to read. It's such a good saying, because I think I'm sure you have to be in love with the setting that you're writing in to really want to dive in and do the research and write that story. Awesome. And The Ideal Countess is a great book. So I think you had some good ideas for what you wanted to write for the book that you wanted to read.
Thank you.
Yeah. Janna, do you want to go ahead and talk about what you write in the Regency era also? Tell us what drew you to that.
Well, I have to give the credit to my mother. My mother was a second grade school teacher, and she also taught remedial reading. But every Friday at the elementary school, the teachers would come in with paper bags filled with used books. And the majority of them were Harlequins, but every once in a while there'd be a Barbara Cartland in there. And I don't know why she gave me this Barbara Cartland book, and I read it, and it was just amazing. And so I would always read Regencies just from that. Now, I think that the reason, though, why I like to write in the Regency period is that it really, it was an age of enlightenment and revolution, as Katherine talked about. But if you looked at the role of women in that period, I mean, it was very, very, let's say it was a challenge from the standpoint that, whenever a woman got married, I mean, all of her legal rights went into her husband. And so, I mean, that in itself is just such a conundrum. And there's so many great storylines that you can get from that. And so that's why I like writing in the Regency period. And besides that, who can resist a man in breeches? So.
Exactly. All right, Paullett, do you want to tell us about your era and why you chose it?
All right. Well, the Enchantress series is pre-Regency. It's 1790 to 1795, roughly. And I didn't actually choose the era. I chose the characters, and then the characters chose the era. And that's really how it's going to end up working with all of my books and all of my series, is what era does this character belong to? So when I was trying to get to know the characters for book one, and so book one set the scene. I was trying to get a feel for their values, their mores, their beliefs, and they were both very radical individuals. They loved science, they loved politics, but radical politics. And I'm like, what's going on here? Where do you guys fit? And they were very, very. I mean, they were the embodiment of the Age of Enlightenment. They were all of the radical ideas of the Age of Enlightenment, and that's what made them. I don't want to say not ideal partners for their peers, but really that's kind of what it came down to. Is I don't know if I like the way you think. You're a little too radical. So it ended up making them perfect partners for each other, and they launched into literary and science discussions that they couldn't share with other people, and that's what ended up helping me choose that era, was what they believed in and their viewpoints. So every series is going to be a little bit different. I might have some series that are in the early 18th century, mid 18th century. I might then jump over to the 19th century. Now eventually I want to do a series with the children of this set, and we already kind of have that set up. We get to know their children as we move along in the series, as they start growing, and those children are going to be right for the Regency era. It's going to end up being perfect, and the characters chose the era. I didn't necessarily pick I want to do Regency. It's I want to do the stories of these characters who just so happen to be of romancing age during the Regency. So I love all eras, and I think it really comes down to, can I get the reader to fall in love with it as well? You picture Captain Hook wigs, like, you know, of the early 18th century, and you're like, okay, come on, that's just not sexy. And it's like, I bet I could make that sexy. Like, give me a chance. I bet I could make that sexy. So I think that's really kind of the fun of it, is can I make heels and makeup and long wigs sexy, or can I make, you know, whatever the era is, a smoggy London, can I make that sexy?
I love it.
Yeah, the era doesn't choose me. I don't choose the era. The characters do.
So to piggyback onto that, once you wrote your first book, The Earl and the Enchantress, did you find that the rest of the series, the characters just naturally came along in that time period without a lot of issue?
Definitely. And I think that was only because I had built the family around it, and so they naturally went into it. There was not a struggle of, I feel like I'm trapped in the wrong time period.
Awesome.
I'm 20 years too soon. What am I doing in 1790? Come on.
Right.
I didn't feel that. They very much fit.
I love it. Thank you. All right, Beatrice, you want to tell us about your era and what drew you to it?
My husband would tell you that I always kind of struggled with the era that I was born in, and he'll make fun of me for lighting oil lanterns and hanging clothes on the line in January. And I'm currently writing the Victorian era because there's just so much appealing to me. The characters that I've picked for the first book, of course, she started in Ireland. Her father is an alcoholic. Her mother has struggled with mental illness. She finds herself in New York, and I've sort of staged it 10 years before the Civil War to kind of get in with the characters and what they're about. And the journey there's so much going on in that era with, the slavery and the war, and in so many ways I can take it. And, everybody wants to say the romance of that era. And I think combined with, there's tons of romance in the modern era. There are just so many distractions. And really, when you start researching women and what their role was in the Victorian era, it's really not all that romantic.
Right.
You find myself just, but yes, women were in the face of things put on a pedestal and respected. They had no rights, and their husbands were keeping the hookers busy. So it's it's hard to I love that time frame for this, for what I'm writing right now, but a little bit of what Paullett referred to. It's any idea that I wake up with in the morning and I start researching on how I can make that work, and where that's going to happen and what time that's going to happen. And for right now, it's the Victorian era. So
yeah, I love it. And I think your book really touches on issues that span time and are still issues for women even today, and mental health issues and things like that we can identify with the characters in your book, even though they're over 100 years ago. We still find that connection as human beings to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, guys. All right. So second question we have is, how do you choose names for your characters? Janna, do you want to go ahead and start us out on this one?
Well, because I do travel from Kansas City to Minneapolis quite a lot, I always look at the road signs on the interstate, because so many people that immigrated from Europe came to the Midwest, so that's always a treasure trove. Mm-hmm. Whenever I've done not a lot, but I've been to London and around in the UK 3 times on research trips. So I'm always writing down names from there. I'm very careful that I don't use an actual peerage name or a famous family's name. It's something I try to make my characters as unique as possible. And then it's funny that you say that. I have this lovely book called the Writer's Digest Character Naming Source Book. And so if I'm looking for a character that I know needs brightness or some type of light in their life, I'll try to find a name that corresponds with that. So that's how I get my names.
I love it. I feel like naming your child is so huge of a decision to make, and I can't imagine naming all these characters because it's such a commitment to put a name in a book.
Well, I'm having a problem right now. I've got a character by the name of Blythe, and my editor says, you know, that's not going to really roll off the tongue very easily. So we need to have a nickname. Well, a nickname for Blythe is Bliss. Now, to me, Blythe is much easier to roll off the name than Bliss.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's what I'm struggling with right now.
Do you fight for the names of your characters?
I do.
Yeah.
You know, I actually wanted this one to be named Blanche, but after I had, but I was like,
Yeah. Paullett, how about you?
Well, most of the characters that I have are inspired in some way from people I've met, people I know, friends, family members, folks in my family tree, that sort of thing, old colleagues sometimes. And I shamelessly steal their names. Now, what I'll do is mix and match. So I might have, let's say, a character inspired by an old colleague, and I won't use that old colleague's name because that's just kind of weird. So I'll give that colleague, say, the name of a distant cousin, and so I'm still using my family's name, but the character itself is inspired from the old colleague. And then I end up, you know, shaking that up, and maybe a secondary character ends up getting her actual name, but the character itself is inspired from someone else. So everybody in my books is inspired from someone I met, someone I know, and then the names are also from folks I know, the colleagues, the family, the family tree, all that sort of stuff. And sometimes I dig pretty far back, like an old high school friend or something, and it's like I want to give like a homage to them. And quite a few of the folks, like these aren't people. Well, there are a few people that are, you know, still alive in my life, but most of these people, like they've long since passed. They're, you know, say an old high school friend who died in a car wreck, and it's like I want to use their name to honor them, and they need to have this moment of forever in a book. I mean, they will forever live in my books. Even though I'm not writing them as the character, you know, I still want to name after them. It's the same with my family members. You know, I'm stealing not the names of the family members that are alive, but the names of the family members that have passed, like a grandfather, a great grandfather. And it's like, you need to be a hero, or you need to be a heroine's father, or you need to be, you know, in some way respected in the books. The secondary characters, I think, are the most difficult for me. I don't. It's a terrible thing. I don't want to waste a name. I don't want to use one of the names that I want to show respect to in a secondary character. So the secondary characters have me digging through, you know, archives of names at the time, popular names at the time, and I'll usually kind of change it up a bit, change the spelling a little bit, but I'll steal from there. So the secondary characters end up getting the archive search.
They get the lesser names. I love the idea of memorializing someone, though, in the name in a book. That just feels so special.
I have had a few people say, wait, is that me? And I'm like, well, it's your name.
Right.
But that's it. The character isn't you. But I'll eventually make a character that is you. So watch out.
Stay on your good side. All right, Katherine, do you want to tell us?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a great system for it. It's something I'm working on. In the Ideal Countess, the main character's name is Alice, which is a little bit of a nod to an ancestor of mine, Alicia Catherine Mant, who was actually publishing children's books in Jane Austen's era. But other than that, I mostly just look up, you know, what were popular names at the time. Yeah. I've started noting down in particular surnames when I'm doing research about the era, just to kind of have a list that I can go to. I remember when I very beginning started writing in 4th grade, hearing that J.K. Rowling just had this list of intriguing names that she heard, and whenever she liked a name, she wrote it down, and then she would return to that for her characters. So I'm trying to work towards that, and now I want to get that book that Janna has, so that I can have a better system, because I tend to notice that I kind of like get stuck on a letter, and then everyone's name starts with the same letter.
That's actually in Marvel Comics. Stan Lee did that with his comic versions. There's Pepper Potts. Like everybody had the same letter for a lot of his characters. So it could be a thing and it could work for you. Beatrice, go ahead with yours.
Kind of randomly, I do have a notebook from years ago from unpublished manuscripts that I have. And it, to be honest, just becomes agonizing. I get so sidetracked, and what I found myself doing is writing several chapters, especially with the hero under a certain name. And then even halfway through the book or to the end, I think, no, that's not him. And I find another name. So I go and replace the word throughout the story. As an example, like I got halfway through Taming the Captain, and the heroine's name was Enda, which is an Irish name that I love. And towards the middle of the book, I just thought that doesn't work. So Enda became her best friend's name, and she took on the name of Bridget. And so it's very random for me. There are a few people that I know who I'll use their last names randomly. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, and I change it. But it's just, I really struggle with self-discipline and staying focused. And so that's one way that I can get completely sidetracked. And as the story comes together, it falls into place, or at least I think it does. So
yeah,
it's probably something I could spend a little more time streamlining in the future. I don't know. There's certain names that I just love that just don't fit into a story. And I'm like, oh, I want to use that, but it just stinks. So
I love that, because it's kind of the same thing when you look at a person and you think like, oh, you totally fit your name, or, oh, they don't look like the name of the character. So your characters that you're writing kind of take on that same, like the persona of the character has to match the name that you're giving them in the book. And I love that you have the time to change it halfway through and adjust and not feel like this is what I named them. They have to stay this name.
Right.
Yeah. Just that free flowingness of the writing process is amazing.
Well, it can be, for me, it can be a little haphazard. There's a lot of editing that happens as I go just because of that. But, it's the freedom to do it that way. So
exactly.
It works.
And thank you, everyone. We have some questions coming in, so we will try to get to those questions too as we move along. So next, let's go with what creates a happily ever after for you, and how do you create that feeling and give it to your readers so that they, close that last page in the book and give that big sigh and, like I'm in love with being in love. Katherine, do you want to go ahead and start us out on that one?
Sure. I think going back to writing the book that I want to read, I try to write what I find happy. And, I think in Regency romance, there tends to be a convention of it, they end up married rather than they're in a relationship for now, because there's a lot of risk involved if they're not actually married.
Right.
So that's something that I'm continuing to play with. I've only done one full book so far, but I think for me, I'm most concerned with, are the two characters, whether they're hero and heroine, whoever they are they in a relationship where they both feel safe about it and they both feel that there's a balance of power? There's no like one person has more power than the other. Mm-hmm. And that would be something that they've negotiated throughout the book, right. Not necessarily something that is, the legal power structure, because as Janna was mentioning, there was a lot of legal stuff that was difficult in the Regency era. Sorry if my radiator is really loud. It's in the apartment, so you have no control. So I just try to make sure that all the threads of the story are resolved, and that the two love characters are able to, walk off into the sunset, and you can kind of rest easy knowing that they're going to be okay together.
I love that. Paullett, do you want to go ahead and tell us your version of HEA for the end of your stories?
All right. Well, a lot goes into it, actually. It begins with two imperfect people. Each of them are individuals of their own right, and they have fears and dreams and goals and internal conflicts. And really, the journey in my book, in each of the books, is that they have to overcome the internal conflict before they can work out a relationship. And that's part of the challenge of the relationship. Like, hey, I think I'm falling in love with this person, but I've got issues that I've got to work through. I've got obstacles. I can't face my demons. And it's the love itself that gives them the courage to face the demons. They couldn't do it on their own, but the promise of having someone who understands them as they are, not trying to change them, not trying to, create their ideal person, but rather they respect and love the person that they are, that gives them the power and the courage to face those demons. So by the end of the book, they've each overcome their own internal conflicts, and by doing so, they're able to come together. Now, my idea is by the end of each book, we should have this impression that no matter what happens, no matter what argument, no matter what obstacle, if one of them was in a carriage accident the next day and disabled, if somebody suffered from severe postpartum depression, if there was any kind of mental illness or physical illness in their life, they would overcome it together. It wouldn't become an obstacle to the relationship. There's not a divorce in their future. I don't have any happy for nows. I have happy forevers. I want us to really buy into the relationship enough to say these two, they're going to make it because they're their own people. They have their own goals and they support each other and love each other for who they are. So that's what really does it for me is, two independent souls recognizing each other and together overcoming obstacles. And I'll say something really controversial here. I don't think that love conquers all. and what I do think it does is provide us the courage where we wouldn't have faced those demons before, but now we have a new goal. And it's like, if I want to make this work, I'm going to face those demons. So while the love itself doesn't conquer it, it gives us the power so that we can conquer our own goals and make the love happen. So yeah, that's happily ever after for me.
Beautiful. I love it. Beatrice, go ahead and tell us about your happily ever afters.
I feel as writers, we sort of have an obligation to our readers to fulfill the trope and the happily ever after. I don't think that can be done well without the growth of the protagonist in whatever their reaction is to the antagonist and how they develop as a person under adversity, and then how they bring that to the love affair. That to me is like the huge fulfillment, is watching someone go from half of who they were to the end of the story, that love has just made them grow and blossom and everything's great. And so for me, it's got to be a full range of character arc. And so, obviously I'm delving into writing a series that are going to be a build on series. So there's a cliffhanger at the end of each book. So maybe I'm not going to deliver the actual happy ending in full at the end of that book, but the characters are growing and becoming more fuller versions of themselves along the way. And then, my absolute favorite fulfillment of that is the horrifyingly evil person who just is so stricken by love that they do something horrifyingly heroic and then die. That's it. They got to die. I don't have any villains that bad in my book, but for me, it has to be the full circle of the personality involved and how they grow, and then relate that to the affair. That for me is the happy ending.
Yeah, and I think your book, it does leave us hanging for the story to continue, but you satisfied the reader with enough of that love story and changing of the characters to come together to make us not angry at you, shaking your fist at the end of the book.
I don't want that.
Yeah, no, we feel satisfied enough, but leaving us wanting more and the story to continue on. So
thank you.
It's got to be a hard balance to achieve, where you're not giving too much, but you're leaving a satisfied feeling at the end of the book. Well,
and selfishly, I was able to dump the remaining 30,000 words into the second book. So I'm like, I know how this goes. So that's not very fair to everyone else, but trust me, it's good. Yeah.
Janna, we'll get to you in just a second, but I wanted to tell Paullett that apparently you're not too controversial, because the comments are definitely agreeing that love does not conquer all. And they love the sentiment that true to yourself and changing as a person is what really brings that together. So,
if anything, I think love is a challenge. and we've got to sort out how to make it work. But cool, thank you for those comments.
Janna, go ahead and tell us about your happily ever afters.
Well, I mean, with the thoughts that the other authors have said, I agree with all that, and I think that if we look at what makes our characters unique at the beginning of the book is that they're really not. They have a hole, let's say, in their heart, in their lives, that somehow or other they're not being completely fulfilled in what they believe their journey is. Of course, as they go through that character arc, it will change. Their realization will change as to exactly what it is that they need. And I think that at the end, what makes a happily ever after satisfying is that they become wholehearted with a WH. And by that, it's that they can, whatever is chained to them, whatever struggles and strife that they've experienced, they can set it aside to have more optimistic look at life. Because ideally, and particularly now in this social distancing, self-isolation period, it's important that we have happiness. And I think as romance writers, it's our job. If we can't deliver that HEA, it's not a romance, obviously.
Right.
I also think that for my books, I always have an epilogue, and normally that epilogue will be, I like for it to be a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, so that you give the reader that comfort that they know that that couple is still together, they're still in love, they're still crazy about each other. And, sometimes you can't always do that in a series. Sometimes you can only have an epilogue that maybe is a month or 2 months later, because the next story in that series, because remember, when you have a series, you got to be planning all these things that are going to happen within those books, and they've all got to tie in together. Right. Sometimes that epilogue can only be a couple of weeks afterwards, but the reader still wants to know that these guys are going to be okay. And when you deliver that, they know that 50 years down the road, when these couples are old and gray, if they're still alive, because let's face it, times were tough back then, but they're still going to be happy. It's still going to be a cohesive unit together. And by unit, I mean that they complete each other. Yeah. So that's what I see as a happily ever after. And that's what I try to deliver in my books. And that's my dog.
Mad Max.
Mad Max.
And I feel like that's such a part of romance, is flipping to the back, and then you need that last satisfying little read that they had the baby together, or everything worked out okay, and it makes you feel like, oh, all's right in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I read romance.
Yes. And I think right now more than ever, so many people are, like you said, drawn to that. We just want to read a happily ever after right now. I want an escape from reality around me and just be lost in this book and feel good about the world around me, even if it's this fantasy world that I'm reading. I want to veer off for a second because I love this veer question. So they are at Vamps Rocks asks, as a reader, titles are more important to me than covers, and quite a lot of them. So someone before that was asking, how do you choose your title for your books? And I think that's such a good question. I'm really curious to see. So Beatrice, how did you come up with your title for your book?
It's pretty easy, and it sort of refers back to the last question of fulfilling Anthony's character arc. He's just a wild heathen when they meet and doesn't want to fall in love. And what's great about Bridget is she doesn't want to fall in love with him either. She has plans for herself when she gets to America. And so I joke with my husband about it all the time because we've been married for 20 years. And I say, it took me 20 years, but I tamed the beast. And that's kind of where the title came from, is Taming the Captain was just, it kind of just came to me, and I thought it fulfilled what the characters were doing. So it was pretty simple, but I have several more books to name. So ask me in a few months or a few years. So
we'll come back to you at a later panel.
Yeah.
Katherine, how about you?
I find titles really difficult I do want it to go back to something to do with the character arc or the main theme or question of the book. And then also, it is a marketing tool. So something that people will be able to recognize that it is Regency romance and, something that they'd be interested in reading, or if they don't like Regency romance, so that they know that it's not the book for them.
Right.
So yeah, I don't have a great answer to that question other than that it is, something that I struggle with, and I definitely do brainstorming and try to, get what other books are titled and get feedback from people and find out what's going to be the best title.
Yeah, no, and I think I'm sure the viewers and I appreciate honesty of there's things that are hard to do, and coming up with the book title and summing up your book in this one little tiny sentence on the cover has to be a big, feels so important because you want to convey the whole message of the book in that one little bit. So no worries. And then Janna and Paullett, question is a little bit different for you because you've both written series. So how did you find something? Did you go with individual titles? I think, Janna, your books are kind of covered under a series but have individual titles to them. And then Paullett, you wrote with a theme that went across with the Enchantress series, so all your titles had to tie in together for yours. So Janna, we'll start with you and your titles.
The original title of the very first book in the series is The Bad Luck Bride. And the original title was The Secret Affairs of a Duke's Daughter. Now, that was because, as Katherine was saying, I have a tough time with titles too. But once we decided upon The Bad Luck Bride, it was easy to get the first, then three. Because remember, all of these things are about, every book in this series is about an heiress. And so it just made sense. If they're an heiress, you're going to have brides, and we're going to have luck involved with it. And the first three books in the series feature on the covers just one lady in a beautiful dress, and it just made sense that it would be the brides for the first three. So it was The Bad Luck Bride, The Bride Who Got Lucky, and then The Luck of the Bride. Well, guess what? You run out of brides and luck. And so it was decided then I wanted to do what they call a clutch cover, which is the couple embracing for the last three, because in those last three books, The Good, the Bad, and the Duke, Rogue Most Wanted, and then Wild Wild Rake, the male characters were really the apex, I think, of the storyline across the series. Mm-hmm. And so when we got to that, it just made sense that we would have more titles that were on that focused in on the heroes. And so that's how we got that. The Western theme, the Good, the Bad, and the Duke, which is a story that takes place at Christmas time, and it's like Home Alone meets the Regency. The heroine is left at home. It's a big mix-up, and so she's on her own. And the title of that was supposed to have been Home Alone with a Rogue, but that wasn't going to work. So we did The Good, the Bad, and the Duke, and that was perfect because it's a redemption story of the male character, and he was the villain in the first book, so it was perfect. And that's how we get our titles.
I love it. And then Paullett, so you have the Enchantress series with the names kind of playing, continuing the Enchantress theme. How did you come up with that?
Well, before I answer, I did want to say that Lindsey is waiting to be let into the panel. So if you spot her, pull her in.
Okay.
And as soon as we work that out, I will answer your question.
Let me see here. I can click on it. Hello,
there she
is. Welcome.
Oh, you're muted, Lindsey.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just telling my husband that we're good.
Awesome. We are so happy to have you here, Lindsey.
Okay, excellent.
Do you want to finish your answer, and then we'll go to Lindsey and we'll have you introduce yourself?
All right. So my titles, I definitely struggle with titles in that I come up with, I don't know, about 10, 20 titles, and it's like, well, what's going to work best? What's going to have the right ring to it? I'm usually inspired by something that's happening inside the book, like a a reoccurring theme, a reoccurring name, something that you see a lot, maybe something that the hero thinks or the heroine thinks, or just something that they're thinking about a lot. And so for this series, originally it was called, now I can't even remember what it was called. I don't like The Lion and the Blue Stocking or something. It was terrible. And I took it to my writing group and they were like, yeah, this is pretty terrible. I was like, oh, okay, so we won't do that. And I really liked, this is ancient. I don't know if anybody's a fan here, but The Lion in Winter. I was really inspired by that title. It's one of my favorite movies. It's an old movie. But I wanted to do something with lion, and I realized it didn't quite work with the series, and it didn't give us the impression of who the characters were. So I ended up with the Enchantress series, and the Earl and the Enchantress, the Duke and the Enchantress, the Bear, and it all had the Enchantress tie-in, and that's pulled from one of those reoccurring words, reoccurring themes, reoccurring thoughts of the heroes about the heroines. So yeah, it's always some word that ties in somehow, or some concept. Nothing too wild and crazy.
I love it though, but it gives the series a cohesiveness that you
Oh,
kind
you
of
did
know.
it so well.
Hey, Lindsey, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. If
Thank
you
you.
want
My
to tell us,
apologies.
no problem. You want to
got the
tell
wrong
us a little
time.
bit about yourself and tell us about your book.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me. And again, I'm so sorry for missing at the time. My book is Striking Romance, and it is the first in what I hope will be a long series. I'm working on book 2 right now, and it's set in 1905 in New York City.
I love it. And to just kind of piggyback, we were talking about titling your books. So do you want to tell us how you came up with the title Striking Romance? And I have to say, when I first heard the title, I thought, oh, this is like a cute romance title. And then when I read the book, I was like, oh, light bulb moment.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, and actually it's 1904. Sorry. The book I'm working on now is 1905. So, I mean, not that it really matters. I mean, splitting hairs, but yeah, I feel like I wanted to keep with the genre. I feel like the genre has a lot of puns in a lot of titles, a lot of play on words, a lot of actually I'm seeing a lot of titles now that will be references even in historical romance to modern movies, which is kind of interesting. So I'm like, you mentioned Lion in Winter, although that's not really a current movie, but so yeah, I was just trying to do play on words. The book is about the shirtwaist strike of 1909. I moved it up a little bit in time for a couple of reasons, because I'm getting on a tangent. Sorry.
You're fine.
I like care about historical accuracy so much that it still kind of bothers me that I didn't set it in 1909. But partly I wanted to make it clear that this is fiction still, that it's not the actual shirtwaist strike. It's just kind of a tribute to it, I guess. So yeah, I wanted to have strike in some way in the title.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful title. And I believe it was at the end of your book that you laid out actually for the reader, like, these are the events and like things that were used in the book. And this is actually when they were invented, and this is when the actual event happened. So even though you created this fictional world of things like around that decade, and forgive me if it wasn't your book, I'm pretty sure it was, that you laid out.
I did.
Yeah, this is when it actually happened. And I really appreciated that as a reader, that it gave me, that I wasn't like leaving the book thinking like, oh, this is when it was. Like, I know the actual event and the date and all that after reading your book.
Oh, good. Yeah. And I hope it, readers will want to dig in deeper and find out more about that time.
Absolutely.
Googling afterwards.
Yeah. Your book left me doing a tangent on birth control methods.
Oh yeah.
The early 1900s. I found that so fascinating. Yeah. Well, thank you. It's an amazing book. I really love your book, Lindsey.
Thanks.
All right, so we will jump into viewer questions for the last little bit of our panel here. So first question, and I am super excited to hear your thoughts on this as someone that writes book reviews. So do you read the reviews left of your books? Beatrice, go ahead and start us off on that one.
Yes, I do. First of all, I can't resist it. I'm just like was the kid that was always unwrapping Christmas presents 3 days before Christmas. So I can't resist the urge to not go look. And it's always the little jolt of getting a good review. But I have to say, I mean, we're all conditioned now from years of living in the world of social media that we're all conditioned to. There are some petty, spiteful people out there that just want to say mean things. But there are also people who, if I read a review, will make me say, I think it makes me a better writer. Like, oh, I thought I developed that more, or I thought that was clear, or those things to me are, they're very helpful. So I like all the reviews, and mercifully, and you know, that the book has only been out since February. So I'm waiting for that one that sends me crying to my room, but we'll see. I don't know. Short answer, yes, I do love reading reviews.
Yeah. And Lindsey, how about you?
Yeah, I read all of them, and I agree. I think the feedback is incredibly helpful. I'm always, even if it's critical, I'm always incredibly flattered that someone took the time to leave it, because, and I would never want them to think that we're going to dismiss it, because I do find all of it helpful. I also feel like it's helpful from a business standpoint for kind of carving out your brand and your niche. I mean, I'm only one book in, but afterwards, I think I did have a lot of questions of like, is this something that readers will want? I feel like I deviated from the genre in a few ways. Mm-hmm. I think I deliberately tried to make it very history heavy. It was almost a striking romance, almost a blend of historical fiction and romance together. Yeah. And a lot of the critical reviews reference that, and also the positive reviews reference that. So that was kind of divisive, and it was helpful to know that, I guess it was just helpful to know, because I had to decide, is this something I'm going to continue with in the future, or am I going to go more the route of a very traditional romance? And for me, I'm going to stick with it. And I think what will happen is I will lose those readers who are bothered by that, and just kind of carve out a niche for readers who are looking for that. But I mean, yeah, the critical reviews are really helpful, as well as the positive reviews keep you going and keep you motivated to even try and not give up.
Yeah, awesome. Janna, you're 6 books in, so how do you handle reviews?
I think that the question was, do you read reviews?
Do you read them?
I read the reviews that my publisher from like the major trade journals like Book List and Publishers Weekly and Library Journal. I think that you can get into a real tornado if the original or the initial feedback isn't what you think you're going to be getting on that. And so I try to stay away from that. Now, obviously, you can't do that if people are tagging you on social media saying, you know, 3 out of 5 stars or 4 out of 5 stars or 5 out of 5 stars, etc. And so I find that sometimes I do slip into reading those. I mean, there was one that was on Twitter last night, and I wasn't going to read it, but it popped up and I read it, and it was a lovely, lovely review of Wild Wild Rake. And I mean, yes, that was very fulfilling. But I mean, I think that as authors that we have to believe in our own work and be able to put it out there, because otherwise you're going to be spending all your time reading reviews. At least I am. And I don't know that that's going to be that beneficial, because I know where I'm going to go with a particular story or with a series. Right. And, you know, I'm not going to please everybody all the time. Okay. And it's okay. Mm-hmm. You know, as long as I'm pleased. But you know, there's nothing like getting great feedback from it. And, you know, I think some of the other panelists had talked about receiving great feedback from a critical review. And I think that there is something to that. But I think it's also that you can get into a real spiral that may not be to your benefit. So it's a fine line on what you do. So do I purposely go out and try to read them? No. If they come to me, then I'll read them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just want to say I aspire to having so many reviews that is a problem. And that completely makes sense that it would be but Maybe someday.
Katherine, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Lindsey, I'm one book in and an indie author, so I didn't launch it with a lot of reviews coming in. So one of my goals for the year is to get so many reviews that I have this problem. But, I think being a writer, you're used to getting some feedback. I think I think there's grains of salt to be taken from everything. I try not to listen too much to the positive reviews either, because they're lovely, but I just need to listen to my own inner critic and to the editors that I'm paying to pay attention to my writing. And you have to know who your reader is and who your tribe is. I will say I find it really valuable for my competitive research to read the reviews of like the competitive novels that I'm reading, to understand how readers are reacting to those novels and what's resonating with them and what's not resonating, just to kind of help me make sure that I'm staying within the barometer of the genre.
Very interesting. Paullett, do you want to finish off the question for us?
All right. I definitely read the reviews, and I learn quite a bit from them. There's really two types of reviews from my perspective. There's the sort of opinion-based ones, and then there's the ones that provide really useful feedback. I mean, they're not meaning to provide useful feedback, but it ends up giving me some insight. Those are the ones that I really value. So go ahead and just kind of preface this by saying, when I set out to write, I knew that my writing would not be for everyone, and I was actually expecting some backlash from it. My characters deal with mental illness. They deal with any kind of mental struggle. They deal with physical disorders, physical illnesses, physical disabilities, and these aren't the heroes and heroines for everyone, but they're the heroes and heroines for me. I deal, and I'm going to have more of this coming up, especially in book 5. The Heir and the Enchantress is going to deal a little bit with this, where I'm going to be dealing with sexuality and gender, where we're going to have, say, a homosexual character who is trapped in a society that does not accept homosexual marriages, and that's not going to be for everyone. And so I know, based on what I write and some of the controversial things that I write for this genre, that it is not for everyone, and I'm going to get some pretty nasty reviews on that, where it's like, oh, how can you have this? This isn't the hero for me. Oh, that's disturbing. And it's like, wow, okay, well, welcome to life. Don't read my book. I don't think I'm the author for you. And I know that going in. So I do like getting the perspective either way. I like knowing if it is resonating with people. I like knowing if they find that convincing, they find it helpful, if they relate to it, if they don't relate to it, if I'm too over the top, if I'm too stereotypical. Like I do want to know those things. But what I really get value from is feedback on things like pacing, things that I wouldn't have even thought of, but from the reader's perspective, I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't okay, perfect example of something that was really helpful to me. It was with book 1. When I first started going with book 1, I was thinking of going with a traditional publisher. And I was having a conversation with Avon, and I was having a conversation with an Avon editor. And she kept coming back with, you need more internal dialogue. We don't know what they're thinking. We don't know what they're feeling. You got to have more internal dialogue. And I didn't really have a whole lot. And so I kept putting it in there, and I kept putting it in there, and I kept putting it in there, and I kept putting it in there. So by the time I decided I want to go indie, I kept all of her suggestions. I kept everything in there because, well, she's a professional editor with a publishing house. So, of course she knows best. What are all of the critical reviews for book 1? And it's the same over and over and over again. Too much internal dialogue, too much internal dialogue, too much internal dialogue. And I was like, wow, this is mind blowing. And so it was really helpful for me. Like, I'm so thankful for the folks that put something in there, put some kind of feedback, put some kind of critical feedback to help me, because now I know, don't do too much internal dialogue, and also trust myself as a writer. Don't believe everything. Like if you have an editor pushing something, you have beta readers pushing something, and if it doesn't feel right to you, don't do it. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the main reasons that I decided to go indie, is I want to write the things that I want to write, and not the things that you want me to write. Yeah. So that was really, really insightful, and it has changed how I approach future books. So I look for I look for things like that in the reviews. What can I do to improve my writing? And how are they relating to the characters? Are they relatable or are they over the top? And it's easy to be over the top sometimes and stereotypical when you're dealing with some of the topics that I'm dealing with and some of the issues that I'm dealing with. So yes, I definitely read the review. It's the good, the bad, the ugly, everything.
Yeah. So I guess the overarching theme between everyone is really stay true to yourself. Because we had some people commenting, aspiring authors, write the story that you want to read, like we started out with Katherine. You have to own your book and put it out there. And no matter how the reviews come back, you know that you can't make everyone happy. Not everyone is going to love the story, but then you're going to find your true readers that really appreciate the story that you wrote and stay with you for the long haul for however many books that you're writing and love each and every one of them. So, and I do think that there's a difference between, I try to write book reviews for the people I know that are following me and just people that enjoy similar books to what I like to read. I'm not writing a critical review that's going into a magazine. I'm not picking apart your writing style. Like, that's not my job. I'm just telling other people on social media, like, hey, we enjoy reading the same books. I think you'll enjoy this author. So that's what I try to do. And then leave, if there is any critical things that I thought about the book, maybe send it to the author or put it on a Goodreads, for people that want a bit more in depth. But because I do believe, even if I didn't enjoy a book, there's someone out there that the book is meant for, because we all see things differently and come at it from a different perspective and have different life experiences. This was so much fun. I had an amazing time. I can't believe an hour is already up, because I could keep talking to you guys all day. And there were so many more questions that we didn't get to that I love to hear the answers. So hopefully another time, another day, we can get together and do another panel and talk some more book stuff. So, and thank you to everyone that watched the whole time. We really appreciate it. Katherine, if you want to give us a goodbye quickly, and we'll go through each person and wrap up real fast.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really awesome. Thank you to everyone, on my fellow panelists, and also to everyone who's watching live. I've seen some really interesting comments coming through that are giving us lots of food for thought. Don't forget to enter the giveaways and the virtual book signings. I've got stuff, but there's a million other things. And stay home, stay safe, stay healthy.
Janna, go ahead.
Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your day. And it's been a true delight. I love talking to all these other authors. And Melissa, thank you. You're a wonderful panel host. So It's been a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Beatrice.
I wanted to say thank you to all of the ladies that joined the panel. It's just such an honor to be part of it. And to Melissa, I feel at home here, so that's fun. It's been a great experience, and thank you to everyone that tuned in. And don't forget the giveaways and the virtual signings, and everyone be well. Thank you.
Paullett.
Well, following with that theme, thank you to everyone who chimed in. I'm jazzed to see that we actually have some folks that are watching us live. I wasn't quite sure how many live folks we would get. So thank you for commenting. Thank you for engaging. And the panel doesn't end here. I mean, you can contact, I know certainly me, and I'm sure the other authors, you can contact us from our website or social media, especially if you have questions that you didn't want to ask publicly, or you felt, weren't represented in the panel. Mention it to us, post it on our social media, post it to our website. And we'll get back to you, and we'll engage in any of the thoughts that you had. So thank you very much for attending, and thank you for having us. Definitely a stellar hostess.
Thank you, Lindsey. And I wanted to give you a chance. I wasn't sure if you were in any giveaways or virtual signings, and don't feel bad if you're not. But if you are, if you want to announce that.
I'm not. I don't think I have the technological skills yet to manage that. But thank you so much for having me. This was, such an honor. And all the questions that you sent me to think about over the week were really thought-provoking, and just kind of got my brain going again. I think this pandemic has been very stifling for me. So it was wonderful. And I do feel like I have some inspiration just from hearing the other panelists. So I really appreciate it.
It was so much fun. And also, don't forget, there's a whole list. If you go to the website, you can go to Social Distancing Book Fest on Instagram, on Twitter. Facebook and see all the rest of the panels that will be going on today. I hope you find a few that grab you and watch them also. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.